Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing good. I hope you've read some pretty good books recently. So this is of course my first video back after my month-long break. I'm not going to go too much into how I've been, what's been going on with me or anything like that, because I'm going to do a separate video where I talk to you guys about what I've been up to over my break. I will just say that so much has happened in my life since I last switched this camera on. It's been absolutely insane, but obviously I'm not going to talk about that because this video is not for that. This is my wrap up. I know I said in my TBR video for this month that I was going to bring you a wrap up to let you guys know what I've been reading this month and whether I think that you guys should be reading them too. So during the month of March I managed to finish 8 books. I gave 2 of them 3 stars, 4 of them 4 stars and 2 of them 5 stars. So I'm going to start with the books that I gave 3 stars to. One of those is The Doll House by Phoebe Morgan. This is an adult psychological thriller following 2 sisters, Corinne, who is struggling to get pregnant, she's going through endless rounds of IVF, and Ashley, who has 3 children and a bit of a distant, distracted husband who she suspects might be having an affair with somebody at work. And it is coming up to the year anniversary of their father's death, and both sisters are experiencing some pretty strange things. Ashley keeps getting some very odd anonymous prank phone calls, and she can't work out the source of these calls or the reason why they might be happening. And Corinne starts finding little pieces of this doll house that she and Ashley had when they were kids, and she can't really understand why these pieces are suddenly coming to her. She thinks that it might be a sign that her recent IVF will be a success this time, and everybody else kind of thinks that she may be getting her hopes up a little bit too much and reading too much into them. And there seems to be somebody else watching both of the sisters who seems to have been watching them since they were a child, and we don't know the identity of this person. So I really liked that whole mystery aspect to it. It's very slow paced for a thriller though, which you don't really expect as a seasoned thriller reader. You expect things to move quite quickly, and nothing really happened in this book until I'd say probably over halfway. And I understand how a lot of people possibly would have put the book down and just given up on it before they got to the part where it did get really good, around the kind of 3/4 mark, like 75% mark. So you would expect really more to happen and for you to be fully invested in it before that point. But I never give up on books, so luckily I did get to the part where it did start getting really good, and then the final page was just like, oh my gosh, so much more needs to happen. So if you like your books where everything is tied up nicely at the end, probably I wouldn't recommend this because that really does not happen in this book. But I think I just wanted a little bit more to happen earlier on in the book, and that's why I only gave it 3 out of 5 stars. The other book that I gave 3 stars to this month is While You Sleep by Stephanie Merritt, and this is another psychological thriller about a woman called Zoe who is an artist, and she decides that she wants some time away from her family life, so she basically goes to stay at this abandoned house in this remote Scottish island, and she becomes part of this very tight-knit community that they've got going on this island. They're all a little bit kind of skeptical of this outsider coming in, but she learns a lot of stories and secrets of the house that she's staying in, and a lot of stories of things that have happened on the past on this island. And I've really enjoyed the whole spooky atmospheric feeling of this book. I think the author really did setting really well. I just really loved the whole house atmosphere. It was so spooky. I know this thriller was inspired by classic Victorian ghost stories, and I absolutely love classic Victorian ghost stories, so I really loved the elements of that in it. But I think my main issue with this book really was I didn't really like any of the characters. Like, I couldn't connect or care enough about them. I thought the romance was really cringy, and that was apparently something that I was supposed to be on board with, and I just really wasn't. And also I was a little bit disappointed with the conclusion of everything, because I was so into the spooky scenes in it. I kind of wanted that to be built a little bit more upon, and when everything unraveled I just wanted that to come into play a little bit more than it did. But I did really enjoy certain scenes of it, so I would definitely recommend it if it sounds like your kind of thing. I will leave a review of it that I did on my blog in the description down below, so obviously give that review a read if you want to. So yeah. Now on to the books that I gave 4 stars to. So one of those is The Immortalists by Chloe Benjamin, and this is a story following 4 siblings who are living in New York in the 1960s, and they hear news of a travelling psychic woman in their area who claims to be able to tell anyone the date on which they will die, and these siblings are really curious and really excited. They really want to know this information, so they go and find this woman and they each learn the date on which they will die. And then what happens from then on, the story follows basically the next 5 decades of these siblings' lives. We learn what each of them do with this information, what the woman told them, and it was just so interesting to see how different their lives became, what they each chose to do with the knowledge of when they will die. And I really liked the structure of it because each quarter of the book was dedicated to a different sibling, so you got to know them as individuals as opposed to just a family group, which I really enjoyed. And obviously there were lots of themes of mortality and questions about whether are you living your best life and things like that. It was just really interesting. I did write a full review of this on my blog too, so I will leave a link to that review in the description down below, so give that a read if you are more interested. The next book that I gave 4 stars to is Everything is Lies by Helen Callaghan, and this is another psychological thriller about a young woman who comes home to her parents' house. She lives away in the city, and she comes home one weekend and she finds her mum hanging dead in the garden and her father lying in a pool of his own blood. He's not dead, but he's close to death, and he can't really articulate exactly what's happened to them. And the police have ruled this a suicide murder attempt on her mother's part, but she is adamant that that's not true. She believes that her mother would never do something like that. So she starts delving into her parents' recent lives. She discovers some notebooks in her mother's handwriting. It turns out that her mother was planning on writing her autobiography, and she learns loads and loads of secrets about her mother's past that she had no idea about before. Her mother has led this incredibly interesting, harrowing, terrifying past that was really interesting to read, and there are lots of suspicions that this may be something to do with what has happened to her parents now. And it was just so compelling, it really was. There were a few red herrings in there which I really appreciated. There was times in this book where I thought I had everything figured out and then something would happen that made me think, okay, maybe I've got that wrong. But it was just really exciting, it really was. As I said, I really enjoyed reading her mother's story as well. I just thought it was really good. So yeah, I would definitely recommend this if you are looking for a really unique, exciting mystery thriller story. The next book that I gave 4 stars to is The Diary of a Bookseller by Shaun Bythell, and this book was actually lent to me by one of my real life best friends because she read it and she loved it, and she said that I had to read it and that I would love it, and I really did. So this is basically a non-fiction diary account of this guy who lives and works in this bookshop in a little Scottish village called Wigtown, and it was just so witty and so quirky. He obviously talks about his staff members, his regular customers, and just his regular everyday life as a bookseller, and I just really loved it. It was a really uplifting little read. It made me really want to visit Wigtown, so hopefully I will get there eventually one day, but it was just a really lovely little quirky funny read that I really enjoyed this month. The next book that I gave 4 stars to this month is A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle, and of course the recent film adaptation of this has just come out. I haven't seen it yet, but I am actually going to see it later on today, so I can't say obviously what I thought about the film just yet. I have heard some pretty unfavourable reviews of the film though, sadly, but that's not going to stop me watching it. I still want to see it and form my own opinion. I hadn't read this book before. I know a lot of people read it and enjoyed it when they were a kid. This is a middle grade sci-fi story about a young girl who goes on an adventure through space. She visits a lot of strange distant planets in the search for her father, who has been missing for some time, and she goes on this journey with her very odd character of a younger brother and one of her school classmates and these 3 very strange women who apparently live in her neighbourhood who can help her out on her journey. It was just so weird weird and so whimsical as middle grade sci-fi and fantasy often is, but I was fully on board with it. It was really, really funny at points too, and it was just a really, really fast little strange ride that I really, really enjoyed. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how the film compares and obviously forming my own opinion of the film. So yeah, really enjoyed A Wrinkle in Time this month too. Now on to the 2 books that I gave 5 stars to this month. So one of those is Goodbye Perfect by Sarah Barnard, and I've read both of her other 2 YA contemporary books, and Sarah Barnard's books often focus on the kind of darker side of teenage life. That there's always a really serious topic that is at the centre of the plot, and this one is about 2 best friends, Eden and Bonnie, and Eden was adopted and she's very, very happy in her adopted family, and she's been best friends with Bonnie since they were 8 years old, and they've always done everything together. Bonnie is very academically gifted, she's very into her exams and doing well and all of this kind of thing, and when the action takes place in this book, both girls are studying for their GCSEs, and then 2 weeks before the start of their exams, Bonnie runs away with her secret boyfriend who Eden apparently knew nothing about, and it transpires that Bonnie's secret boyfriend is their music teacher, Mr. Cohen, and Bonnie starts texting Eden, basically updating her on the situation, and she swears Eden to secrecy about their location. So the whole story basically revolves around Eden's loyalty to Bonnie versus doing what is probably the right thing, and obviously telling the police and Bonnie's parents their location, hopefully getting Bonnie home. And it was just such a beautiful story, and I loved Eden as a character. I just absolutely adored her. I admired her loyalty, and even though Bonnie put her in this really quite terrible situation, she was still wanting to be this amazing friend to Bonnie, and Bonnie was so irritating and so frustrating at times, and I was just full of admiration for Eden and her just desperation to help Bonnie in any way, even though Bonnie really didn't deserve Eden's love and friendship at times. I've really also loved Eden's relationship with her boyfriend Connor. I just thought it was a really, really lovely romance. I loved the developing relationship with her adopted sister Valerie too, and it was just a really, really lovely, lovely story. And I know people who aren't even YA contemporary lovers who have read this and absolutely loved it. It was just a gorgeous, gorgeous story, very bittersweet ending, but it was definitely the right ending, and it kind of gave a message that I don't think I've ever seen in YA contemporary before, which is the message that just because you've been friends with someone your whole life doesn't mean you need to continue being friends with them. If they do something wrong, if they put you in a situation that you're not comfortable with, it's okay to break that friendship. Just because you've been friends for years doesn't mean you have to continue that friendship, which I really, really appreciated. So yeah, please read this book. It was just a really, really lovely YA contemporary. So yeah, cannot recommend this enough. And the last book that I read this month and also gave 5 stars to was Pet Sematary by Stephen King. So this was a reread for me, and I actually buddy read this with a few of my bookish friends, Carl at Expelliarbooks, Cherry at A Cherry Walker, and a bookstagrammer that I really love called Fran at Bookishly Crocheting Me. I will leave links to both Carl and Cherry's channels in the description down below, and also a link to Fran's bookstagram, so please go and check them out. They are all absolutely amazing, lovely people, and we buddy read Pet Sematary this month, and I think I've often said on my channel that this is my favourite Stephen King book, and I've read a lot of Stephen King books in my time. I think it is probably now actually tied with this as my favourite Stephen King books, but I really loved it, and I really actually enjoyed it a lot more than I did the first time. And I first read it years and years ago, but reading it now as a more grown-up, mature person, I actually got a lot more from it. So if you don't know the story of Pet Sematary, it basically follows a young family who move to a new house in a town called Ludlow in Maine, and they live opposite an old couple, Judd and Norma, and our main character Louis becomes quite friendly with Judd, and Judd tells him stories of all of the things that have happened in Ludlow before, the things that have happened in the house that they have moved in and things like that. And Judd shows them this pet cemetery in the town, which is basically where where all of the children in the town have buried their pets after they've died, as kind of like a tradition type of thing. And after a family tragedy, Louis learns that there is another burial ground just beyond the pet cemetery that has some ancient dark magic and supernatural powers attached to it, to some incredibly terrifying, scary consequences. And I just absolutely love the way that King presents family life in this, because this is not just about straight scary horror, it's also about learning to let go when you need to. It's about dealing with grief, it's about dealing with love and heartache and the horrors that can be. It's about true horror, and that's one reason why I absolutely love Pet Sematary above all other Stephen King books and stories that I've read. So yeah, cannot recommend it enough. Please read it if you are looking for a genuinely haunting horror book that I promise will stay with you forever and ever. So yeah, that's A Pet Sematary. And that is it for my March wrap up. What books have you read this month? Please let me know. As I said, I will be coming to you with another video about the slight changes to my channel, and basically just what I've been up to. So obviously stay tuned for that. I'm currently reading 2 books, one of them being The City of Brass, and the other one being the exact opposite of OK, which I will be talking to you about sooner than you're possibly expecting from me, but obviously more about that coming up. So I will leave all of my social media in the description down below. I hope you're having an awesome day, and I will see you very soon for another video. Bye bye.